All right, we're here with Valiant Player on the campus of Clemson University, and we have two student athletes from the women's volleyball team. So we've got Colleen, Finney, and she is in her sophomore year, and we have Crystal Childs, who is now going to be a senior.
Yes.
So here we go. So, all right, let me start with you, and we'll talk a little bit about your journey from high school to college and what that transition was like.
Yeah, so I knew I wanted to play a Division I sport. Wasn't really sure which one. I grew up playing basketball. My family is a huge basketball family. I was the first girl in the NBA, but didn't work out that way. So definitely fell in love with volleyball at a young age and knew that this was the sport for me. I continued playing throughout all of high school, played club, found ways to get in front of coaches for recruiting. And once I stepped on Clemson campus, I knew this was for me. It was my new home, and I committed right after my visit.
All right, and with you, I'm going to ask you the same question, but we're going to transition from that right into some of your prep for college because of your. Do you want to explain that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, I grew up a big Clemson fan. We used to come up to pretty much all the home games. But my mom was an alumni here, and then my twin brother goes here, and also my older sister graduated from here, I think in 2016. But I was a huge fan. I always knew I wanted to come here. But when I was being recruited, I actually wanted to look away. But as soon as I came on my visit, I was like, this is the only place that feels like home. I always knew I wanted to come here, and it was just great. And it's actually really funny. My dad found a poem from when I was younger, and it was always Clemson is the best place ever. Go Tigers, and this, that, and the third. So it was always home for me.
So we talked a little bit earlier. So the transition for you was pretty smooth because you knew all about Clemson coming in.
Yeah. And not only that, but honestly, here I feel the resources. Everybody's just so helpful. Everybody wants to help you, and especially the student athletes, we get access to tutoring, and your professors have office hours and stuff. It felt a little bit easier on me than I thought. And it was honestly a perfect transition.
You have been here 4 years.
Yes.
And how was your transition into college?
So my transition was actually probably a little more difficult than Colleen. She already kind of knew the land, what Clemson was about. I honestly had no idea about Clemson until I came to camp. So everything was very new, very eye-opening, and it was a lot to take in when I first got here. I was very overwhelmed trying to get my academics handled, making sure I knew not to get lost on campus, time management. So I did struggle my first semester a lot, just trying to make sure that not only did I get everything online and help my team out as well by performing well, but make sure that I took care of myself as a person, getting the sleep I needed, eating, all this time I had my parents behind me. I'm all alone in this big new world and finding ways to handle myself. But now looking back on the 3 years, I've really found myself as just a person and not just a Clemson athlete, but also making sure that what I do is really helping my teammates, my coaches, and Clemson University at the school.
So what do you think from freshman year to now, how you've changed and what you've learned? And how are you a different person? Or are you somewhat the same person?
I'm definitely a different person. I think throughout high school, all my life I just played sports, and that kind of was my identity for still the volleyball player. But getting at Clemson and finding my voice and figuring out what I'm passionate about, knowing that not only just helping social justice, but my own teammates and the stuff that we go through on a daily basis, and being that helping hand and an open ear, really made me find that I'm more than just what I do on the court. I can help out the community, I help out my school. This past year, we created a unity campaign to show that we were all in, all together, all teams, fighting against racism and embracing diversity. So one of the things that I just learned from growing is that everybody has a voice, nobody should be silenced, but making sure that when people are speaking, sit down and listen and help them learn about what else can be done. You can't help anybody if you don't educate first. And I think that's my biggest takeaway of how I've changed as a person.
Now your journey's been a little shorter, but a little change from when you walked in the door as a freshman?
Absolutely. The lessons I've learned has just been it's been kind of overwhelming, honestly. But honestly, it changed me for the better. And I think college really does do that to you because you're living on your own for the first time. You got to learn how to play with people you've never played before. And then I think a big struggle for a lot of Division I athletes is you're coming from places where you were either the best person on your team or the top player in your team or your club, And I think that kind of shifts like once you get to college, because it's like everybody else on your team, it was in that same circle. So now it's like a constant grind of like, okay, like I'm good, but now I need to be better. But I've definitely changed, even in the short time that I've been here.
And so we talked a little bit about discussing adversity. Can you point out some adversity you've had to overcome and how you dealt with it?
Absolutely. So my struggle semester was actually last semester in the spring. You know, a lot of COVID protocols have been placed. It was a little bit more strict than when we played in the fall. And all of a sudden one day, I finally come back for my first game. And when I came back, like, I felt like a really sudden pain. And then after that, I go get it checked out by a doctor on Monday. And like, you know, I'm fighting through the pain. It was the worst pain I've ever been in my life. And they had told me, like, gave me a diagnosis on what it was. And like I had to get a procedure done the next day to get rid of it. And, you know, it was such a shock because like this type of procedure that had to be done wasn't like, you know, an ACL or like ankle or, you know, something that you could kind of rehab. It's something that had to be done and took me out. And that was probably like the biggest thing because I not only had to get that procedure, but I was out for a month. I couldn't sit down. Like I would come to practice and like have to lay on my stomach because of like where the procedure was done. And it just was insanely difficult to try and get through that. And then not only that, but that was like the second thing that happened to me. But when I got back from that injury, I got COVID. And so for me, having to go a month without like volleyball, without anything athletically related, was probably the most mentally draining experience I've ever been through my entire life. That was probably the biggest struggle to try and get through that. But you know, everything happens for a reason. You know, you learn from it, became a better person after that. And so like, it was very much a struggle, but you know, I got through it. I'm a better person now. So like, you know, it is, you know, it is it is at the end of the day.
All right, how about your struggles that you had or some adversity you've overcome?
Yeah, so similar to Colleen, I unfortunately had a couple of injuries since being at Clemson. I think my hardest one was going into my sophomore year summer. I needed to get a tonsillectomy and get my tonsils removed, which is a very painful procedure. 1 week later, after my tonsillectomy, I landed on the floor really weird. I had a sudden pain in my foot, went to get checked out, and I found out I fractured my foot. So similar to Colleen, it was just like back to back. I felt like I couldn't catch a break. It was very mentally tough because I got to see my teammates on the court, and like I'm very passionate about the game, and I'm like, I just went through these two tough things. I want to be out there, but I physically cannot. So finding a way to mentally overcome that, knowing that I need to rest, I need to recover, is going to be better, but that prolonged thought of when, like, it's going to be next week, it's going to be 2 weeks. And mentally, I went through kind of an identity crisis because I'm like, I don't have volleyball right now. I don't really have school. We're summertime. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know like what else I can do, but I just didn't no longer have what I came here for. I came for school and volleyball, and I'm at home by myself watching my team play. So it was really hard, but the biggest thing I took away from it is that everything happens for a reason, just like Colleen said, but also like your mental health is so much important to your physical health and how you perform. So definitely tough, but I think as an athlete, we go through it all the time. It sucks when it happens, but when you come back, you are more appreciative of what you didn't have during your recovery.
So we talked a little bit about social service, and so let's talk a little bit about, you know, how it feels when you get involved with social service and representing Clemson.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best feelings because one of the biggest things at Clemson is our fan base, and they put a lot into us. So when we're able to return that, it's such an amazing feeling to see that we're appreciated more than just what we do on the court or on the field, that we actually can go out, make connections, build relationships. So seeing that like we're able to actually give back to people that are coming to our games, supporting us, paying tickets, buying autographs, and all this stuff is just amazing. And to also see the love that they have for us. They just love seeing us. Like, you don't realize how much of an idol you are to kids because at times we had our own idols, and now we're in those shoes and we're able to do what we did to our younger selves. We have little ones looking up to us and being able to play with them and interact and see how much like they just love being around us is just a good feeling.
I think I touched on a little earlier about how like great the resources are around here. Just being able to like, you know, give back to my community. It's such a great feeling. You know, this is actual life outside of athletics, which is kind of like a great thing to see, and honestly, like, I feel like everybody should see, and it's just so good to have like resources available to us to be able to do that if that's something that we want to do.
So we're hoping we'll be up at the hospital again as COVID maybe calms down here. So as we're looking to do that, do you have any words of encouragement for the kids and any good thoughts for them?
I always just say just push through. You know, there's brighter days at the end of the tunnel. So like just push through. Find something that that you really like or really interested in, whether that's volleyball hopefully, or like football maybe, or even like if you like reading comic books or like action figures or something like that. Just push through, find something that you really do enjoy.
Yeah, no, Colleen really touched on everything. My parents always say that you won't be able to find your rainbow until you get through the rain. That stuff only makes you stronger. Just continue finding ways to spend your time, but also just know that we're coming soon.
Exactly.
We can't wait to visit once all of this is back open, and finding ways to just continue building relationships with everyone.
Thank you so much
For
coming out. I'm really proud of you guys, what you're doing. So that's Crystal Childs and Colleen Finney.
Thank you.
That's it for Value Player.